Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. We're looking at the escalation in Yemen. We're talking about it with, from Dubai, Riyad Kawaji, founder of the Institute for Near and Gulf Military Analysis. From Lund, Sweden, Rusbeh Parsi, senior lecturer at Lund University. In Tel Aviv, Yemen watcher Miriam Goldman of risk consultants Max Security Solutions. And here in the studio, Egyptian analyst Mohamed. Elalfy. We're also joined from Aden, and we'll cross to her shortly. Summer Nasser, who is a contributor to the France 24 Observers, our citizen journalist website. News of these Saudi-led airstrikes inside Yemen's territory, obviously coming all the way to the banks of Lake Geneva. The State Department confirming that U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has talked about it, brought up the issue with his Iranian counterpart who earlier called for an end to the violence.
Military action, especially military action from outside Yemen against territorial integrity and against the Yemeni people, will have no result but bloodshed and slaughter of the people.
Miriam Goldman, just before the break, we heard Rusbeh Parsi say that they were going to be able to keep hermetically sealed the nuclear talks to one side and developments at the foot of the Arabian Peninsula to the other. Do you agree?
I think we've seen this in almost every circumstance that has come up with the nuclear talks. As he mentioned, the Ukrainian crisis did not affect the talks. Any other issues between the U.S. and Iran also did not affect the talks. For example, when the U.S. refused to allow the Iranian ambassador to the UN entrance into the United States, I think they have very successfully kept every issue separate from the negotiations on purpose so that they could continue their efforts to reach an agreement without letting these things interfere.
Riyad Kawaji, some saying that the Saudis are upping the stakes in part to put pressure because of what's happening with those nuclear negotiations. Do you agree?
Look, what happened today, I think, is a clear message to Iran that the free hand that Iran had in the region by exploiting and using the Shiite community in Arab countries to mobilize them against their governments, to destabilize states and take control of these states, these days have gone. And that from now on, there will be an Arab military reaction to this, because Iran has benefited a lot from this so-called war on terrorism by turning or using the sectarian situation to agitate feelings. And when you have a sectarian situation, you see groups like Qaeda and ISIS grow stronger by the day. And therefore, Iran started to look as if it is an alliance with the US and the West in a war on terrorism, which in fact was more like a sectarian war. And this situation was clear in Tikrit, for example, where the Iranians were with the Shiite militias, which they support, came in carrying flags, banners, pictures of Khamenei, the IRGC commander Qasemi being in Tikrit, and they were all fighting with the air cover from the US. And this has caused a strong reaction from the Sunni and Arab community and brought this offensive to an end. Until now, we see these forces being pulled out in order to allow the U.S. to resume operations. This shows that Iran has benefited a lot from the so-called war on terrorism to expand its influence. Today, what we see is the Saudi leading an Arab alliance with Pakistan and maybe Turkey showing interest in joining to just send a strong message that Iran's exploitation of Shiite minorities in the region to expand its influence must come to bring radical groups like Qaeda and ISIS to become stronger.
Rouzbeh Parsi, do you agree?
No, I think we exist actually in parallel universes when it comes to this. Most of these minorities, whether they are Shiites or other, are usually under the thumb of their own rulers. Most of these countries in this region, including Iran, have most of their problems from domestic reasons, not because of some external actors. This is just the usual line that officials use to kind of project their own problems, externalize them, and claim that it's someone else's fault. The Shiites in Bahrain have been disenfranchised because of the rulers of Bahrain. And whatever they've been trying to do, together with others in terms of the Arab Spring, have had to do with their domestic situation, had nothing to do with Iran. And this is, these kind of explanations don't get us anywhere. And as far as Al-Qaeda is concerned, perhaps we should remind ourselves that it's a Sunni organization and that its origins has to do with Saudi Arabia and Afghanistan and not with Iran.
Rouzbeh, when the White House says it's concerned about Iranian activities in Yemen, there nonetheless is the impression that Tehran is trying to extend its influence.
I'm sure there are people in Tehran who would love to have more influence in the region, and I'm sure some of them are probably also trying. But there's a difference between the perception that everything that is happening in the region that you don't like must be because of someone in a different capital, and the fact that if there are problems, and most of these countries have very severe structural problems, that someone else can use them, or that the people who are desperate will look for external support. So in the end, it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But it doesn't mean that analytically that is the correct sequence in which things are happening.
All right, let's cross now to Summer Nasser. She is in Aden. She's a contributor to the France 24 Observers. First of all, Summer, let me ask you, what's the situation where you are? Earlier, our correspondent in the capital telling us that it's been quiet this afternoon, but there's people desperately trying to get help to hospitals, and rescuers are still working there after the morning airstrikes. What's the situation where you are?
Yeah, Aden is very tense right now. I can confirm that there are a lot of tanks, artillery just being shot by Saleh tanks against Hadi's militias. We, of course, don't have a large Houthi presence in Aden, but nevertheless, we still have ongoing conflicts. Till now, I can hear tanks being shot and fired, and people are right now in their homes. They're really nervous, especially with the new 10-country military coalition that surprised us all, actually, yesterday night.
Surprised everyone. You say they're nervous. Why are they nervous about the outside intervention?
They're nervous. One of the reasons is because they don't, the people of Yemen do not want this to take long. We worry that the situation can maybe be extended. The only issue right now is we fear civilian casualties. We fear that some people of Yemen will end up being affected, as with any type of war, which we're trying to avoid. So we're trying as much as we can to voice out that the military, if they continue to make it as quick as possible and as strategic as possible, so we can find a solution politically to end this crisis.
At the outset of our discussion, Summer, Riyad Khawaji in Dubai was saying to us that the hope for many is that these airstrikes will help to bring back the Houthis to the table. At this point, we're hearing statements from the leaders of the Houthi militias, those that are aligned with Iran, saying that it's emboldening them to fight. At this particular point in time, what are people saying in your neighborhood? Is it a mix of reactions?
Yeah, right now the people here, I mean, the targets actually are very strategic by Saudi Arabia. We feel that the Houthis are crippled in terms of military, air force, or military movement. We feel that eventually, we hope that the Houthis will end up agreeing to sitting down with other politicians and other political groups in Yemen, hopefully in actually, a lot of people would voice for Oman, the Kingdom of Oman neighboring Yemen, for a new dialogue talk that can give peace to this country that I think every regional neighbor would appreciate.
All right, we're going to hear some of the reactions from leaders. One from the Egyptian foreign minister. This, as we go into that Arab League summit this weekend, the Arab League saying it's preparing a unified fighting force. He wholeheartedly endorsing what has been dubbed Operation Decisive Action.
It was an obligation to answer the call of President Mansour al-Hadi. Egypt has announced its political and military support for Yemen and also to join the coalition through air, naval forces and land if the matter calls for it. This is to uphold Egypt's historical responsibility for protecting regional Arab security.
Regional Arab securities. Of course, there are countries that are not Arab that are taking part in this coalition. Pakistan, which has strong bilateral military ties with Saudi Arabia, and an endorsement today out of Ankara. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan saying Iran's efforts to, quote, dominate the region have started to annoy Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Gulf allies. President Erdogan, who sat down with France 24's Mark Perlman.
It is as if it's evolving into a Shia and Sunni matter. That's the kind of period we are going through. Of course, that's not desirable at all. We wished this never happened, actually. And as soon as possible, both the Iranian side and other terrorist organizations that are giving them support need to withdraw. And Yemen should be left to its own devices, should be governed on its own will.
Mohamed Elalfy, up to now, the Turks have been the bitter foes of both Saudi Arabia and Egypt. They're still bitter about the ouster of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Are you surprised today to see Erdogan backing the Saudis?
Let's talk about the actual situation or the actual policy, not about the dreams or hopes, what we need to achieve, but we have to talk about the actual actions on the ground. Now,
but are you surprised to see Erdogan surprising?
No, I'm not surprising because all administrations all over the world would like to deal with the regional powers. Now there is a new regional power in this area. As I said before, in the first part from this program, we prove that we have ability and the capability to achieve peace and to prove our area and to keep the national security for this area. And this Arab coalition will do it. And the new Arab forces is going to do more. And let me say about regarding the Shia or Sunni war, we are not, we don't like to talk about that because let's clarify this point exactly also to our viewers. I don't like them to get confused. There is an Arab Shia. We respect them living in many Arab countries, but a part of them, not all of them, belongs to Iranian structures against them own countries. These groups making a crisis, or trying to create a crisis according to the Iranian instructions. We will not allow to them to do this, and we will not allow to Iran to create this crisis. To create, 2 weeks ago, one Iranian official said, we are a great country and our new capital is Baghdad. But actually, I would like to...
That was one person making a remark.
No, let me say it frankly. Now, this operation will not stop. This operation will not stop. It will be stopped if it will achieve the targets start for. And also, Iran would like to play, let me say, I don't like to say exactly a role in this area, and would like to play also by the nuclear file with the international community to control this area. Erdogan tried before to do this with the Arab countries, and he didn't success. Also we have to tell them this operation will continue, and also I think we will need troops in the next stage from
you'll be needing ground forces.
And also last point is if there is an Iranian intervention, I will say now, if there is an Iranian intervention in the nearest future, I think Iran will do a big mistake, because it will transfer it from Yemeni affairs to Persian Arab wars, and Tehran will be attacked directly.
All right, Miriam Goldman, let me get back to that statement we heard from President Erdogan. Up to now, we know Erdogan's feelings about the president of neighboring Syria, Bashar al-Assad. But up to now, when it comes to Iran, the Turks have been playing it very cautious. Are you surprised to hear Erdogan coming out on the same side as the Saudis and the Egyptians?
I'm not so surprised. I think they probably see it as a way of counterbalancing Iran's support of the parties in their own neighborhood. But let's emphasize the fact that they express support, which in no way means that they will be participating militarily. And on this end, I think it's actually very important to talk about the Gulf Arab state that is not so involved in this, which is Oman.
Oman, which is neighbor to Yemen.
Exactly. They did not sign the joint GCC statement. We have a report that the EU representative for foreign affairs and security policy contacted the Omani foreign minister to talk about the way forward in Yemen. Oman was the only GCC state that did not transfer its embassy from Sana'a to Aden. I think we need to really focus on this country and the role that Oman will hopefully, and I think likely, play down the line, and probably will be heavily involved in ultimate negotiations. I think Oman has shown that it is a very important mediator in the region. It hosted the Iran-US talks prior to the interim agreement. I think a lot of people, a lot of regional states, I think a lot of Western states are going to be looking to Oman as a major party in resolving this down the line.
Ruzbeh Parsi, you agree that the words out of Turkey, from Turkey's president, for now, that's all they are, just words?
I think so. I think we have to remember that Turkey and Iran have a very strong economic relationship, and despite, for instance, their very grave disagreements on Syria, for instance, those relations, those economic, very strong relations, have not changed. So I think in this case, Erdogan, yes, is pinching Iran, but I doubt very much that he will put any force behind those words.
Riyad Khawaji, this is all happening at a time when Saudi Arabia has a new king. How are the Saudis doing, and are they overstretched with their involvement as well in the U.S.-led coalition in Syria and Iraq?
I don't think so. I mean, the Saudis have a formidable large air force, and their involvement in the coalition in Iraq and Syria is, I think, confined to a couple of squadrons and some air support and nothing more. So I don't think this will, obstruct or affect in any way them leading the big operation in Yemen.
Let me ask Samar Nasser at this point. When you hear about troop buildups on the border, obviously that makes you nervous. But right now, we know that in Yemen there are mixed feelings when it comes to the neighbor to the north. Some are cheering. We know the intervention. Others are angry, and they still remember, for instance, the expulsion of Yemenite workers from Saudi Arabia in years past.
Yeah, Yemen has actually, especially the border where Sada is, we've seen in 2009 and 10 a conflict between Saudi Arabia and the Houthis, in which they had signed an agreement for a border agreement. Again, in the south, we do have a different historic complexity because, again, in 1994, the Civil War, after unification, and this affected how the mentality works in the South in terms of political intervention. The South are very, very appreciative that the coalition of 10 countries, including the GCC, has intervened, but in the North as well, they feel like it's a very sensitive issue. They feel that this was because of the Houthi expansion was because of Saleh, and so majorly overall we hear that the major fault with the
Summer, I'm going to interrupt you because the line is breaking. Summer, I'm going to interrupt you. The line is breaking up a little bit, but from what you're saying there, that a lot of this has to do with the rivalry between the current president and his predecessor, which we shouldn't. Which we should stress. You're right to do so. Let me put a final question here to Rouzbeh Parsi as we get news now of heavy explosions rocking Yemen's capital. We've talked about what's going on in Syria and Iraq. We've talked about what's going on right now at the foot of the Iranian Peninsula. We know what's going on in Libya. Is everyone overstretched, I guess is my question.
Well, everyone is perhaps overstretched more in their fears than in reality. I think a lot of the things that come up in the show today shows that there is a lot of projection of fear that I really don't see have much basis in reality. And when it comes to the military, I think all of them are going to be much more careful than, shall we say, the desktop warriors in a TV studio regarding how much they're willing to invest. Because ground troops brings you to a totally new level and requires a totally different kind of political acumen than just bombing a city from afar.
Let's just hope then that peace prevails. I want to thank you, Rouzbeh Parsi. I want to thank as well Riyad Kawaji for being with us from Dubai, Miriam Goldman in Tel Aviv, Summer Nasser in Aden, and of course here in the studio, Mohamed Elalfy. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.